You're listening to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast, where we champion music of all genres, and we believe vinyl is king.
For a dying man, I feel pretty good, I feel pretty good. For a righteous man, I'll do what I should, do what I should. For a fallen man, I'll get up again, I'll get up again. For a dying man, I feel pretty good. Oh, we're born to trouble as the sparks fly high. Born to trouble as the sparks fly. It's alright. In the light, I see you glowing. It's alright. In the light, I see you glowing.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast. We are coming off a pretty packed month, and we had several LP interviews that went live in May. It was a really heavy month, and you can take that to mean multiple things, I think. But now it's June, and it's summer, and we are glad to be back with this month's club episode called The 45 and discussing the June records of the month. I'm David Williams, and as always, I'm here with Rudy Newman.
Hey, everybody.
This is one of those episodes that feels like we have so much to talk about with the 4 albums in our program.
This is a packed month.
Yeah, it's just a lot of really great stuff, I think, this month. I obviously I like all of our picks every month.
Yes. Who picks those?
But for this month, I don't know. It just feels like it's pretty stacked.
It is stacked, and even like the classic rock record, which I'm always like, yeah, that's a good one every month. This one is very special for me. I love Van Halen, and
very special, I think, for everybody.
For everyone, yes. And one of their best albums.
Yes.
So it's a special one.
So today we are discussing all 4 styles represented in the Blind Tiger Record Club program. We have the singer-songwriter album, which is the fantastic new release by Sammy Brue called Crash Test Kid.
New West Records, what's up?
The rock alternative pick this month is Reunions by Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit.
30 Tigers, what's up?
Just another home run for him and the band. We have Pick Me Up Off the Floor by the amazing Norah Jones for our Jazz, Soul, and Blues record of the month.
Blue Note Records, what's up?
Our classic rock record is one of my all-time favorite bands and albums. As you already mentioned, it is the iconic rock band Van Halen, and really one of their most essential releases, 1984.
Arguably the masterpiece.
If you sign up at blindtigerrecordclub.com, you can pick one of these albums to start your membership. After that, you're going to get vinyl like these delivered to your door every month. We now have international memberships available, so you can join from almost anywhere in the world. And right now, it is actually a perfect time to sign up. If you join during our Summer of Wax promotion between June 1st and August 31st, we will give you a B.T.R.C. gift card that you can use on anything in the store. So you get a 3-month subscription, you get a $10 gift card. You get a 6-month subscription, you get a $15 gift card. You get a 12-month subscription, you get a $20 gift card. So head to the website, sign up today, take advantage of the Summer of Wax. Well, Rudy, let's drop the needle, take a quick listen to the Blind Tiger Record Club's June Records of the Month. So the first album we're going to talk about today is our singer-songwriter record of the month, which is Sammy Brue and his album Crash Test Kid.
I can't help but question the path I never chose. When the greater order gets to me, I wipe it off my nose. I love the joy that's all around me. I love this creaky town. The box they built was pretty, but it could not bring me down. I don't feel gravity, no, no, no. I don't feel gravity, no, no, no. When people say to me, you don't lead, you follow. I don't feel gravity, no, no, no. Branson's in denial that you want to be his friend.
I mentioned to Rudy earlier this week that I almost wish we had made this the rock alternative record of the month instead of singer-songwriter. I just, for some reason, every time I'm listening to this record, I feel like this is the kind of song I would hear on like Sirius's alternative station, and then I would grab my phone to save it so I could listen to it more later. And I would also note that if I did hear probably any song on this record on that channel, I would probably be saving it. Like that's how strong the
Absolutely.
record is. But
But it definitely has like more of a plugged-in vibe than his last album, like
Yeah.
where it was like largely acoustic and more folk and Americana feeling. This one's like got the rock alternative.
yeah,
you
I think his first album was much more in that Americana lane. This one, I mean, it is part singer-songwriter, but it's part indie rock. It's
Yep.
part Americana, but
Yep.
it's part pop alternative.
Yep.
So it's a bigger album, which I think gives it a lot of its strength. Crash Test Kid is Sammy Brue's second album, and it was released on New West Records on June 12th. His first album was I Am Nice and was released in 2017 when he was only 15 years
Yeah.
old.
That's the crazy thing about Lil Sammy Brue is that he has been writing those grown-up, wise beyond his years songs since he was 11. I think was the first song he ever wrote was at age 11, which just what? Come on. But I was actually interning at New West Records, which his record label, in 2015, I want to say, my last semester of college, and he actually came through, so he would have been 14 at the time, somewhere around there, for the Americana Awards, for Americana Fest week. And
you were like, look at this little kid with long hair.
yeah, and he was just with his dad. He came through the office, and I was like, oh, that's Sammy Brue. He's on the label, and that is really a kid right there who is on this label. And we watched him perform that night in the back parking lot of New West Records. And I remember standing next to a guy from the Chicago Tribune, like a writer that was in town for Americana Fest, and he was like, who is this kid? And I was like, that's Sammy Brue. He's on our record label. And he was like, wow.
Yeah, evidently
This is
everybody sees him.
amazing.
I think there's some story about how the first time even American Songwriter wrote about him was they saw him busking
at,
somewhere in Colorado, I think, or
Sundance.
somewhere. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was at Sundance.
Yeah.
And people see that, and they're so like moved by it that they actually engage. I mean, it's not like they just threw $1 in the
Well, it's almost
in
like
the
he
guitar
got,
case, you
he's
know?
one of those like viral success stories because of other people filming him and like people discovering him through other people being like, have you seen this? Have you heard this?
Well, that last album that we mentioned, it got a lot of coverage in the Americana world. I mean, periodicals like NPR, Pace Magazine, American Songwriter, Rolling Stone, like they were all talking about that record when it came out. And again, that he was 15, that was 2017. So now, here we are in 2020, he's still only 18 and he's releasing his second album, Crash Test Kid. And the album, in my opinion, is a huge leap forward, especially with the songwriting. It's just a much stronger album.
Yeah, you can hear a marked difference in how intelligent the songwriting has, become over the years, over the last 3 years, while he's grown up into an adult.
Yeah. Well, one of the first songs released was a song called Teenage Mayhem. And it's really one of the more rocking tracks on the album. But even though it rocks, like the whole hook is built around this very Americana like acoustic guitar sound.
Almost got a blues feel.
It is. I mean,
like rockin' blues.
I thought it was a steel guitar at first, even because I can't tell why. It's just got an interesting tone. But
and this is one of those songs where like the beat kind of reminds you of like a freight train chugging along. Like once it gets going, you're just like, wow, this one's going. This is a burner.
Yep. Well, this is Teenage Mayhem.
I've been hushed, but now I get to talking. I got hidden hopes and I got dangerous thoughts. And now I'm waiting for teenage mayhem yet to come. Yeah, I'm waiting for teenage mayhem yet to come. We've been left to curse in paradise, and now that all is left to just stay rolling the dice. I'll be waiting for teenage mayhem yet to come. Yeah, I'm waiting for teenage mayhem yet to come.
Justin Town Earl has been a major influence on Brue. His father took him to a JTE show when he was only 10. And he met Earl and they became friends. And I just, when I heard the story, I just kept picturing like Earl seeing this 10-year-old kid with long hair and glasses coming up to him. And he had to be amazed that not only could he talk fluently about guitar because he was already an accomplished guitar player, And I think he played the same guitar as JTE, and they were talking about that.
Yeah.
But he had to also be amazed that a kid this young was such a fan, because honestly, like,
how many 10-year-olds
yeah,
are going to be listening to
nothing against JTE, he's awesome.
No, it's not.
But,
it's just that, normal 10-year-olds are probably like listening to the, whatever's on Nickelodeon or Disney.
Yeah, they're not that. It's
not
you're not
Steve
getting
Earle's
it.
son.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, let's be real.
So they kind of get this little friendship going, and not long after that, when JT's coming back in through town, he calls them and asks Brue if he wants to be on the cover of his next album. And so his 2014 release, Single Mothers, you see Sammy Brue's
Brue
on the cover.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I read that he even like went to the like the optometrist and like showed them a picture of Justin Townes Earl and was like, "Hey, I want these glasses.
Yeah, that's right.
Make this happen."
Right.
So
I keep picturing that first time they met, and that's the kid that walks up to him. He's got those glasses.
Yeah.
He's talking about the guitar that
he's already fully in it, and
Yeah.
is like, "Yeah, this is my idol."
Well, on this album, Brue teams up with producer, singer-songwriter Ian Archer. He's known for a lot of writing.
Yeah. This wasn't a name that I knew before we did our research, but like, wow.
Yeah, like most of his credits really are on the songwriting realm versus production.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're big. I mean, he's written with Snow Patrol, multiple albums, Jake Bugg, James Bay, Niall Horan, Mighty Oaks, Liam Gallagher, Frank Turner, just like
too many.
So many. You can't even list them all.
artists.
Yeah, and he's gotten cuts with all of these guys, which I really think
Ian does good work.
it's crucial that an artist, especially when they're young and they're learning how to make records, I really think that it's crucial for them to be with a writing producer, like not just somebody that knows all the knobs and making good sounds.
No, someone that can like elevate your songwriting.
And I think that's what we see here, because I
They
look at this
co-wrote,
and
like,
this album
these songs.
is so much stronger from a songwriting standpoint.
Yep. And you hear that with other singer-songwriters too, and artists all across all genres. Like
Absolutely.
that can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
And not to say that Sammy needed help, but he pushed him in another direction, and you hear the sound difference in Crash Test Kid and I Am Nice.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a different maybe like strategy that you can take with a band, or where you've got a lot of people that are collaborating to make it sound. But when you've got a solo artist,
there's not a lot of outside influence other than they're listening, what they're listening to, and then if you bring songwriters or producers in.
Well, and just kind of like as a comparison, when we talk about Jack White and Brendan Benson and the Raconteurs, every time we've talked about them, like we always note how different Jack White sounds there, because that collaboration really changes even him.
Pushes the pop element out of Jack White, because Brendan Benson understands how to get that out of him, probably.
Well, and that's the thing is I listen to this and this album compared to his first one. Granted, it's very hard to say this really with a straight face, because you're literally reviewing an album that a 15-year-old wrote.
Yeah.
So I would hope that at 18 he's got more to write about, and I hope at 22 he's got a whole lot more. Yeah. Because some of it's just
like
life.
King,
Evolution,
totally that. Which he's also toured with or whatever. But like, just think about that.
Yeah.
There's these young prolific talents that like. They're already writing songs, like I said earlier, way beyond their years. Mm-hmm. And like the subject matter, you're like, how do you even know about that? I'm 34 and I've never, really dealt with that emotion. But they somehow are able to like pull that, into their songwriting, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, I think this album's shockingly good. It's definitely one of my favorite releases so far in 2020. And one of the first tracks they released to tease the album was a song called Megawatt.
Went to the Pink Floyd laser show at the Clark Planetarium. Emma said it looked beautiful as the lights are really going off. And I was so glad that your fear was gone. I felt that pride so strong. Those palm tree days won't take too long if we keep on looking up. It's a 10,000 megawatt love, blasting all of our troubles, sipping starlight out of a spoon on a giant green and blue bubble.
Brue has been touring with artists like Justin Townes Earl, off and on for a while. But even early part of this year, he was touring with Michael Kiwanuka and fellow child prodigy that you've already mentioned, Marcus King.
Yep.
Which I just think that's so interesting that the two of the youngest, most prolific, writers that I know of in current music were touring together.
I don't think Michael Kiwanuka's that old either, and that dude is...
That would be a really great show
beyond.
to see.
Yeah. I would like to see,
Well,
bring that tour over here.
I really actually want to share so much of this album. We've talked with New West about possibly having Brue on the show for an LP interview, so maybe we'll do that in the future, because honestly, I really just want to play more of this record for everyone to hear.
And it'd be nice to dig in with Sammy.
Yeah, and dig in and just kind of have him, share some of his thoughts on some of this. I think it'd be really fun. Our members are going to be getting a limited edition, 150-gram, red and yellow splattered audiophile pressing.
Yep.
Autographed. And Sammy Brue has signed all of our copies for our members.
Yeah.
So, this is truly one you don't want to miss. Go to blindtigerrecordclub.com and pick singer-songwriter to get this album. So the second album we're going to talk about is our Rock and Alternative Record of the Month, which is Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, their new album, Reunions.
I guess we're leaving town again. We're moving out, moving in. Gotta break the news to all my friends, but they won't care. They'll just find another face to fall behind, to take my place, to run way past second base and just stand there. A dreamsicle on a summer night in a folding lawn chair. Witches ring around the moon, better get home soon.
So Jason Isbell released his seventh studio album on May 15th via 30 Tigers. And this is his fourth with the backing band that includes his wife Amanda Shires, the 400 Unit.
Nice.
So this album peaked at number 1 on Billboard Country and Folk and Rock album charts. All three of them is number 1.
Hot out of the gate.
It was number 9 on Billboard 200. It was also immediately added to many mid-year best of 2020 lists. So, Billboard's 50 best albums of 2020. It was number 6 on Pace 25 best albums of 2020. It's number 11 on Stereogum's 50 best albums. And Variety's best albums of 2020 was on that list.
I think we're going to find Jason Isbell on a list whenever he releases an album.
Well, that's going to say, especially this is the mid-year list. So the question is always there is sometimes these drop off, and by the time you get to the end, they're not there anymore. But I don't think that's the case with this one. I think this one.
You're talking about the King of America.
Yeah, it's going to be on most of those lists, and
the current king.
Yeah. So the first single off the album is "Be Afraid." The song is currently at AAA radio as we speak. So here's Be Afraid.
And I don't think you even recognize the loss of control. And I don't think you even see it in yourself. See, every one of us is counting dice that we didn't roll. And the loser is the last to ask for help. Be afraid, very afraid. Do it anyway.
So Isbell is coming off his 2017 hugely successful album, The Nashville Sound. And on this album, Isbell teams up with none other than producer Dave Cobb.
Oh, wow. What a surprise.
We've clearly talked about Dave Cobb a lot on the show. We've also talked about the 400 Unit before. We've had Jason Isbell in our program. We had his live at the Ryman in our singer-songwriter program last year.
Yep.
So we talked about the 400 Unit at that point, I'm sure. But just to refresh everyone's memory, along with his wife, Shires, who's on fiddle, there's Sadler Vaden on guitar, who's also in Driving and Crying.
Yep.
There's Jimbo Hart on bass. There's Daria DeBorgia of Sunvolt, who's on keys. There's Chad Gamble on drums. So he walks into the studio really with like a stacked deck of creativity already, and then just adding Dave Cobb to that mix. It was just so natural, and it literally could only produce great things.
Yeah, you've got some incredible studio musicians there, especially in Sadler Vaden and Jerry DeBorgia. Really everyone. I could just mention all their names again, but
we mentioned all of them, outside of the 400 Unit, because they guest on so many other albums. I mean, even his wife Amanda Shires, she's on. Not only was she in our program as a solo artist, but she also has been on a ton
Part of the
other albums.
Highwaymen,
Yeah, well,
part of
yep,
other
that.
people's albums. Sadler Vaden has solo stuff, part of other bands. Like, these people are ingrained in the Nashville sound.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Well, another song released before the album was out was a song called "Only Children."
my favorite one on the record.
It really is a great song. It's one of those that kind of just shows why Isbell connects with so many people.
Well, and like on every record, he has, like from 24 Frames, and then If We Were Vampires, and then now Only Children. He always has a song on every record that you're like, oh, that one is just like a ghostly, haunting, beautiful track,
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, this song absolutely shows the depth of his songwriting. And, he's also, he is a dad now too. And so, I think like as a husband and father, there's just like these sentiments that he can express now that he couldn't even in his younger writing. And so I think that the songs really have, kind of matured and seasoned in a really appropriate way.
With his age.
Yeah. So here's Only Children.
Walking around at night, fighting my appetite. Every kid in cutoffs could be you. Remember when we used to meet at the bottom of Mobile Street and do what the broken people do? Are you still taking notes? The Holy Ghost could get inside you. You do whatever you put your mind to. Will you read me what you wrote when we were locked outside the building, over encouraged only children?
You mentioned earlier, I think, I forgot how you phrased it, but something like he's the king of Americana.
Yeah, current king.
Yeah, current king.
I don't know if he's the all-timer.
Well, he has won 9 Americana music honors and awards.
He's the king of Americana, people. I don't know how to tell you any differently.
He is without a doubt one of the most powerful voices in the genre today. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
He's also won 4 Grammys and 2 UK Americana awards. So,
wow.
I see this album easily being another awards collector for him.
Absolutely.
I'd be shocked if it didn't maybe even garner one of all of those again.
Yep, absolutely.
Eric Danton is a writer in Pace Magazine, and he said when he was reviewing this album that his best impulses he keeps channeling into his music on 7 albums and counting, and the result is a body of work that often feels indispensable. Isbell is a songwriter's songwriter, but the songs that result are for all of us. Our members get a limited edition creamsicle vinyl pressing with a collectible mini poster. This is another month where all of our releases are really limited quantities, and they're not going to be available long. You would pick Rock and Alternative at blindtigerrecordclub.com to secure your copy of this album. Also, at our site, you can get many other Jason Isbell albums that we carry in the store, including the enormously successful Nashville Sound. We even have a Drive-By Truckers Jason Isbell collector set that has all the Drive-By albums that included Isbell, as well as his solo debut, Sirens of the Ditch.
For New West Records.
Yeah, and it comes with this really killer lithograph from Drive-By Truckers. Like, as a package, it's one of my favorite collector series set that we have. Yeah.
One of the first ones that we ever made.
Yeah, so check that out when you're in the store. Our third record we're going to discuss is our Jazz, Soul, and Blues pick, which is Norah Jones' new album, Pick Me Up Off the Floor.
This life as we know it, this life as we know it, this life as we know it is over. This life as we know it, this life as we know it, this life as we know it is over. Some may run, but I won't hide.
So Norah Jones released her 7th studio album on June 12th on her ever-faithful record label, Blue Note Records. At the time of the recording, Billboard numbers haven't posted yet. Yep. So I fully expect almost all of her albums posted on the Billboard 200.
Absolutely.
So, this album is a collection of leftovers, so to speak. Since 2018, Jones has been releasing a series of singles, including collaborations with artists and friends such as Mavis Staples, Jeff Tweedy, Thomas Bartlett, Brian Blade, many others.
Yep.
This album is a collection of unreleased tracks that were really penned in all of those collaborative sessions. Now, a lot of those singles that she did, they were all put together on her 2019 release, Begin Again. But the songs that she put together for Pick Me Up Off the Floor, they were never intended to be on a full-length project.
Yeah, it was kind of like a happy accident.
Yeah.
I think.
So she started digging in,
realized
and she just thought there was a lot of material there that warranted kind of a second look. And so she went back in, revisited the songs, and then actually made an album out of those tracks. So, so there's not, like the last one was truly a collaboration because those were like basically a collection of masters that were not associated with. These masters were created for this release.
Yes.
But they were birthed out of those single sessions.
That's so interesting.
So the first single is a song called I'm Alive. It's a collaboration with Wilco's Jeff Tweedy.
And I believe his son Spencer is playing drums on this track.
Yep, I believe you're correct. And this song peaked at number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100 and the AAA chart. It was at number 24 on both of them. So this is the song I'm Alive.
Just sit and wait. Don't move. Just hesitate. You can hope and pray. You can moan. Maybe things will change. You feel your soul get hollowed out while the world implodes. You just live without. She walks.
Since her Diamond certified debut, Come Away With Me, she's constantly released unique material and not necessarily even always on her album. I mean, she's definitely known for her smoky jazz vocal and kind of like a piano loungy sound. I don't mean that in a disparaging way at all. Just that's kind of like their playing style.
Sure.
But she's also collaborated constantly through the years and with a wide range of artists. I mean, I'm talking
all over.
Herbie Hancock, Foo Fighters, Outkast, Green Day's Billy Joel Armstrong, the band Puss in Boots, Willie Nelson, Jack White, just like so many.
Yeah.
So many.
Never ending.
One of the things that really stands out about this album to me is that they're really some of the choices that she makes in production. So there's horns, strings, pedal steel.
Yep.
But to me,
basically
my favorite,
like pushing out of the genre, like pushing away from the jazz.
Definitely, like even though all that stuff's there, like you still have the standard style that she does, which is jazz, country, pop, and gospel. It's all that's there. But to me, it's the background vocals that really separate this album from a lot of stuff that I've heard from her. She just uses them in really creative ways, which I think is kind of a reflection of so much of the collaboration that she's done.
Absolutely.
Just kind of influencing in, which is so interesting because this album, when you think about all these songs were birthed out of collaboration she was doing, it totally makes sense that there's little things here that maybe you wouldn't hear on a normal Norah Jones album.
But they were coming from collaboration.
Yeah, so there's a song I wanted to play called "To Live," and one of the reasons I wanted to play it is because it's a great song, but you can also hear many of these kind of, we'll just call them additives.
Sure.
They're all in there.
Yeah.
So just listen for those. Definitely the background vocals. This is "To Live."
To live in this moment and finally be free is what I was after. No chains holding me. If love is the answer in front of my face, then I live in this moment and find my true place.
Jones has been nominated for 7 Americana Awards, 8 Billboard Awards, won 5, 4 Brit Awards, won 1,
How many
16 Grammys,
Okay,
won
so
9.
Jason Isbell doesn't have anything on Norah Jones is what I was trying to get at.
So,
sorry, Jason.
Well, she's also sold over 50 million albums.
Oh, yeah.
And of course had multiple hit radio singles and countless TV and film sync placements.
And we're talking 20 years now?
Yeah,
More?
she's just...
Late 90s?
I still look at her and I think she's that young girl I heard on that first album. She is now a part of the American fabric of music.
Yep.
And I think it's really hard to release something that still grabs you at this point. And I think this album, you need to kind of listen to it a couple of times and you're going to start picking up on some of these subtle additives that to me make a lot of difference in this album and some of her other stuff.
Absolutely. One thing I thought it was kind of funny that you just said that she was in the, she's sewed herself into the American fabric of music history because her dad performed at Woodstock.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. Her dad, Ravi Shankar, played the sitar at Woodstock. So one generation to another, completely still affecting, history. That's really awesome.
And, you and I were even talking off mic about, we've talked about this with some other piano players in different genres, but she is definitely one of a small handful of players that have these really distinctive runs and notes that she chooses to play and how she puts them together that almost gives her a fingerprint.
An iconic sound.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Very, very signature. It's Norah Jones through and through. Between the voice and the piano, you know that it's her.
Well, Spill Magazine, in reviewing this album, said that it makes no difference which of the 11 tracks are played. The string-driven opener, How I Weep, the jazzed-up country of Heartbroken Day After, or the brilliant I'm Alive. What we have on our hands is the best Norah Jones album so far and possibly a true classic. So that's really high praise for this album. And I actually think it really is a good record.
20 years into your career, 20-plus years, that's pretty awesome.
Well, members of the Blind Tiger Record Club that pick Jazz, Soul, and Blues, you will get a limited edition black and white vinyl pressing.
Yeah, it's literally split right down the middle.
Yep.
Sorry, Dave.
No, that's what it is. It's awesome. It looks like a part of an Oreo.
Yep.
So pick Jazz, Soul, and Blues if you want to secure this album. Also, you can grab other albums by Norah Jones like Begin Again and Daybreaks. We also have the out-of-print featuring album, which is another collaborative album. It's another one where this is one where she did a lot of those tracks with Foo Fighters and things like that. So it's a really tough album to find. We still have a few of them in the store. We're also going to be announcing soon a new Norah Jones collector series so be on the lookout for that because it's going to be a great way to grab some of her pivotal early work in one set.
Yep. All at once.
All right, our last album we're going to discuss is the Classic Rock Record of the Month, which, as we said, is Van Halen and the unbelievable 1984.
Do you know when this one came out?
That is true. You never will forget that. It actually came out on January 9th, 1984.
Right at the beginning of the year.
Van Halen released one of the biggest rock albums of all time. This album was number 2 on Billboard 200 and number 15 on the UK's OCC. And on the Billboard 200, it sat there for 5 weeks because it couldn't knock out Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Well,
which ironically features Eddie Van Halen on the album's biggest single, Beat It.
That's right, it does. So, a little bit of history there.
So, it also produced 4 radio singles, and it went on to be
some of the biggest Van Halen songs that are in existence came on this album.
And it also went on to be certified platinum by the RIAA in the U.S.
And it's also probably one of the best, stories behind the music albums as far as, a band's history goes. The story behind this album is just so great.
Well,
I
just said
kind of happened around
I just said platinum, but I meant diamond.
Yeah.
But so this one is 10 times platinum. The first single was Jump, and it was released in December of 1983 to set up the album. So it went number 1 on Billboard Hot 100, which it's actually Van Halen's only number 1 on Billboard.
Yep.
It was number 1 on Mainstream Rock. It was number 7 on the OCC in the UK. It was one of the biggest songs of 1984.
Yep.
At the end of year charts for the Billboard Pop Singles end of year chart, it was number 6, and on Cashbox, you remember they still had Cashbox back then, it was number 5 on their year end chart. Wow. So it not only was it huge when it came out at the beginning of the year, but this song in particular, it played all year.
And
it was one of the biggest singles of the whole year. And one of their biggest songs of their career, yeah.
And introduced their fan base to a little instrument called the synthesizer.
That's right. This is Jump. Well, that iconic synth part that you were mentioning before we played the song was written by Eddie Van Halen way back in 1981.
Which just goes along to show you that Eddie Van Halen was another one of those prolific talents.
Yeah.
Like, you were already changing the face of guitar music, but yet he comes and writes one of the most iconic synth parts.
Well, and the funny thing is, because, I mean, dude, this is Van Halen.
Yeah.
They didn't want a synth part.
No,
And
David,
it reminds me
David
of,
Lee Roth
yeah.
and Ted Templeman, their producer especially, did not want synths in the music.
But ironically, Ted Templeman is the one that convinced David Lee Roth to actually take another look at the song.
That it would be okay.
Yeah, and
Well, it's
so
producer's job. Make
that's
everyone
right.
happy.
So they'd refused the song over and over again. They just didn't want it.
Yeah.
And he thought Eddie Van Halen thought it was a really good riff,
Yeah.
and they wanted to write around it. So when David Lee Roth finally wrote the lyrics for it, and the rest is history. It's their biggest song. So. This album is a pivotal release in the legacy of Van Halen, not only for its sales and charting success. Clearly it made, Van Halen one of the biggest bands in the world. But it also was the end of the original Van Halen.
Yep.
In 1985, David Lee Roth leaves the band to start a solo career,
Yep.
and he doesn't record with Van Halen again until 2012's A Different Kind of Truth.
Yep.
This began, what some call the Van Hagar part of the band's career,
Yep.
where Sammy
If you've ever
Hagar
seen Joe
joined.
Dirt, then you know exactly what Dave's talking about.
So the band, releases 5150 with Sammy Hagar, on lead vocals in 1986. Amazing album. And that same year, David Lee Roth releases Eat 'Em and Smile. And so that's their trajectory until they reunite in 2012.
Yeah.
So I'll Wait was another single that was released off this album. It was released after Jump. It was the second single, and it went to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 2 on Mainstream Rock. The third single had the exact same charting pattern. It also went number 13 on Hot 100 and number 2 on Mainstream Rock. That song was Panama. The band released Hot for Teacher after Panama, and that was only moderately successful at radio, but it became a pretty big hit at MTV.
It's one of my favorite songs from being a kid.
In total, Van Halen is the 20th best-selling artist of all time in the U.S. They've raked in over 60 million sales in the U.S. alone.
Hello.
I think it would really be hard to argue the influence of the band on modern rock. Or argue that they didn't have one.
Sure.
At
or
the
just
level
Eddie
it is.
Van Halen's influence on guitar players.
And honestly, I think this album, it's really must-own vinyl. Like, I don't know how you could claim to have a serious record collection and not have this among your titles.
Yeah.
There are songs, on this album that, although they were not released as singles, they still work their way on to album-oriented formats.
Yep.
You've got songs like House of Pain, Top Jimmy, and that just goes along with all the other ones, that also ended up on these album-oriented formats like classic rock, after they ran their course at regular format radio.
Yeah.
This album is it's a must-own. It's a must-own.
Absolutely.
Well, our members are getting it in a limited 180-gram audiophile vinyl.
Yep.
Van Halen is also one of those bands that's sometimes hard to get on vinyl. The pressings are limited, and then they go out of print, and so
it's a couple of years before you see anything come back around.
Yeah.
If not,
and a lot of times they get reissued, but I mean, like right now, even if you'd have to work to put a whole Van Halen, collection together.
Yeah.
If you want to get this, pick classic rock to secure your copy of 1984 this month. You can also we have another Van Halen title in the store that we just got called In the Club, which is very interesting. It's a double vinyl that features tracks recorded before their amazing self-titled debut from 1978, which, by the way, was their other, massively successful album. That one also certified diamond.
Yep.
So before that album is where this was for FM broadcast at the Golden West Ballroom and the Starwood Club in 1976. And it even includes a couple of numbers from La Canada High School in November of 1975.
Wow.
So this is a very limited pressing. I don't even know if I can get any more of them other than the ones we have. Yeah. So that's in the store. So when you're checking it out, check that title out as well.
Yep. Van Halen fans, get on it.
Well, that is all the June records of the month for the Blind Tiger Record Club. If you want to find out more about any of these albums, head to blindtigerrecordclub.com and go to the homepage, and you can read more about any and all of the records that we talked about on this show. You can also learn how to become a member. Don't forget, if you join the club during our Summer of Wax promotion between June 1st and August 31st, we will give you a B.T.R.C gift card that you can use for anything in the store. Please follow the podcast, like us, leave reviews and comments, tell your friends about the show, stay up to date on all that we're doing by signing up on our email list at the website. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Most importantly, keep coming back. We want to thank the amazing group Finnegan Bell for the use of their song For a Dying Man as our show's theme song. And until next time, keep the wax spinning.